So if you're an NFL fan, then you might recognize the name of this guy. His name is Shedeur Sanders. His very famous dad was Deion Sanders, very, very, very successful NFL player. So he went to college at at Colorado Buffalo, played for the Colorado Buffalo college team. He was a quarterback. If you don't know anything about football, all you need to know about the NFL is it's a quarterback league, and you need a great quarterback to be successful. And so he was a really, really good college football player as a quarterback. So last year, when he graduated from college, he wanted to get drafted. And so the NFL draft is held, and there are 7 rounds. And I really enjoy that whole process. It's really fun for me to watch. It's kind of nerdy and it's fun. And so the question was, how high would he go in the draft? Would he go first round, second round? And people were like speculating. And the problem, most people thought first or second round because he was really good. So first round comes and all the teams pick and nobody picks him. It's like, okay, a little bit of surprise because it's a quarterback league. He's a good quarterback. We need a quarterback. Second round comes, all the teams pick and nobody picks him again. So now it's kind of surprising. Third round comes, all the teams pick and nobody picks him again. Now it's really surprising. Fourth round, everybody picks and nobody picks him. There's only 7 rounds. The last rounds, 5, 6, and 7 happen on day 3. They're like the rest of the rest. And so on day 5, one of the worst teams in the NFL finally picks him. And I'm just like, what is happening? You see this, if you're an NFL fan, you see this once in a while where you see players drop. Usually it's because they've been arrested right before the draft or doing drugs or something like that. So they usually have to do something really, really stupid to drop. And so afterwards, all these reports started coming out that when good players, before the draft, they go to something called the NFL Combine, and they have to do all these skills tests, and they also have to get interviewed. And in the interviews, what came out was he was so incredibly arrogant that they literally couldn't stand him. One executive said, I don't want this entitled person on my team. He literally cost himself millions because of the arrogance that he brought into those interviews. Now, if you know anything about NFL, there's a lot of confident players, right, at that level, and yet for some reason he went beyond confidence into arrogance, and it was so destructive for him. All of us have seen this in our lives. All of us have been at some point around somebody who was incredibly proud. They're the kind of person that just doesn't ask questions, right? So you're going to think of people as we go through this, right? They don't ask questions because they don't need to, because when you're as smart as them, they just know everything anyway. There are people, you ever tried to give feedback to a proud person? Ever tried to say, hey, can we do this a little better? It's a lot of fun, isn't it? They enjoy it so much. You ever have anyone in your life who literally doesn't say, I don't know? Or doesn't say, I'm sorry? Right? They don't need to. Ever have someone take credit for all the success? When pride takes over, empathy really decreases, and they need to win at everything. Every single discussion turns into an argument. You have people like that in your life? So the easy thing for us to do with a subject like this is to start to think about the proud, arrogant people around us. Very easy to do. The harder thing to do is to ask the question, is there pride in me? Because it's toxic everywhere it goes. Everywhere it goes. Shedeur just gave us a great example of how much it can cost you when it enters your life. But the reality is it's poison. And if it enters into your life, then it starts to poison relationships. You know how many marriages fall apart because of pride? I mean, every single year in America. Pride just destroys marriages, destroys work relationships. It destroys everything it touches. So the question isn't, are there proud people out there? The question is there pride in me, and is it damaging? Am I damaging others because of the pride that I have? Those are the questions I want you to be thinking about, and they're really, really important for us. At this church, what we really emphasize is doing it the Jesus way. And that's what this series is actually all about. I told you when I started this series that the goal of this is to show you how amazing Jesus is. I want you to see how incredible he is, so that you want to make your life line up with his. where he's the Lord and you're his disciple. He's the teacher, you're the student, he's the master, you're the apprentice. That's what I'm trying to do, show you how incredible he is, so that this happens. And it's really a counter to something that we are really good at in American Christianity producing. We're really good at producing fans of Jesus. Hey, yay, Jesus. Jesus is awesome. Yay. We make a lot of fans of Jesus. For most of my career, I was a fan of Jesus. But that's not what Jesus said that we're supposed to be. He literally said in the Great Commission, Matthew 28, go and make disciples. And a disciple, well, they look very different than a fan. You need to understand this as we talk about this day, because both of those will have very, very different outcomes. If it is your intention to live your life here with God on earth, where you are in the middle of a spiritual adventure with him, and you see his activity in your life all the time, solving what you could never solve on your own, then what you're saying is you want discipleship. Because it's disciples who get to have the living encounters with Jesus. That's what I want. I want to become a disciple of his, where I choose to obey everything he's commanded, I choose to do what he did, and I want to become like him. Jesus says in the Sermon on the Mount, everyone who is trained by the master will be like the master, and he's the master. We're the apprentice. That's the goal. And it certainly applies to our topic today. So we're in this series called The Way of Jesus, and I want to show you today how to imitate the humility of Jesus. So I want to ask you to open up your program, take out the notes you'll find, grab a pen. There are going to be some things you can write down as we talk about this super important subject today. Of course, welcome to all you watching online. So glad you're watching today. If you go to our website at Peniel Church Life, you can grab the notes. So this is part 2 of something we talked about last week, and I don't always love to do multi-part messages, but it seems like I do more of them lately, and I'm going to have to get a little bit of a running start to this. I'm going to show you a little bit. For those of you who missed last week, the first 2 points you notice are all filled in because we covered these last week. We started by talking about how important humility is in this world. And we have this definition of humility, and this is all on your notes. It is the noble choice to redirect your power in service to others. Jesus is the perfect model of humility. He used his power to serve others. And last week we showed you that humility is common sense because the world, the amount of information is doubling at a rate of about every 13 months. So every 13 months, the amount that we knew doubles. So the reality is, and will always be, there will always be far more that we don't know than we do. So humility is just common sense. Why would we ever be arrogant? We don't know very much at all. Humility is beautiful, and we showed you this last week, and it also makes you more influential. But what we really showed you last week is how Jesus changed the whole world when it comes to humility. The world used to be this honor-shame society where it was all about yourself and bragging about yourself. The Egyptians, Romans, and Greeks all had these societies that were this way, and Jesus came along and turned the whole thing upside down. I'm not going to re-preach that part of it, but here's what a quote from a historian wrote. He said, "If the greatest man we've ever known chose to forgo his status for the good of others, reasoned the early Christians, then greatness must consist in humble service." And Jesus brought a humility revolution. It is a historical fact that he changed the world. So, like I said, you want to hear more about that? You have questions about that? Go listen to last week's message. But I have to show you that because he changed the world. We didn't talk about how to actually imitate the humility of Jesus. And that's what we're going to talk about this week and next week. So this is going to be we're only getting through part of this today. So we're going to talk about 2 things. Well, or 3 things on here today. When it comes to imitating the humility of Jesus, it all starts with this. First, you have to desire the very attitude that Jesus modeled. You have to want this. This would be a desire in your heart. So, think about what I'm saying. It's really important that you have this in your mind. Ready? So a disciple of Jesus wants to act and live and believe and do the things that Jesus did, right? That's what we're saying is the key to life, is to do what Jesus did. So Look at what Paul wrote in Philippians 2 about the attitude of Jesus. He said, your attitude should be the same as that of Christ Jesus, which would make sense if you were a disciple of his, right? That's what I want. Who being in very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be grasped or held onto, but made himself nothing. That's what he did. Taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness, and being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself and became obedient to death, even death on a cross. So I was thinking about these verses this last week, very famous verses from Philippians 2, and I thought about all the ways these verses explain Jesus stepped down. Think about the steps. So if you don't know who Jesus is, it's really important you understand this. The book of Colossians, it says that in him, everything was created. Without him, nothing has been made that has been made. He is the creator. Some people teach that Jesus was just a nice guy, a good teacher. He was all those things, but he was God among us. God exists in the Trinity, the Father, the Son, and the Spirit. And so he has only known perfection and this incredible relationship with the Father and the Spirit, and they have no beginning, they'll have no end, and all of a sudden in the middle of this timeline, in the perfection of heaven, he steps down. He steps down. And he steps down into human form, born in a barn, a stable. Imagine the first smells that entered his nose as a human, right? Ever been in a barn? Here's God who leaves the palace of heaven and steps down into a stable, and then he steps down into the role as a servant. And if you read Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, all you will see in Jesus again and again is him serving. Serving, 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 serving. And then he steps down into the role of a slave when he washes the feet of his disciples, which we'll get to next week. Then he steps down into a slave's death, which we talked about last week. The Romans considered crucifixion a slave's death because if you're a Roman citizen, you couldn't be crucified. It was too undignified for a Roman citizen to be executed that way. It was a slave's death. And he voluntarily steps down into a slave's death and down into the grave. Now, here's the question for you. Of these transitions down from, how can we even begin to comprehend what it's like to be in heaven, in the palace of heaven, and all the way down into this? How can we the gap is just enormous. Which of those steps down was he forced to take? None, right? What does that verse say? Philippians 2 on your notes. He made himself nothing. He humbled himself. Nobody forced him to take any of these steps. He chose each step. And here's the question again that Paul said. Your attitude should be the same as that of Christ Jesus. So this is my big question for you. Is it? Is your attitude the same as Jesus Christ? Is humility really a critical virtue for you that you want to develop in your life? Quite honestly, my attitude is not the same as Jesus Christ. But it is what I want. So on your notes, this is my goal. My goal is to choose humility as Jesus chose humility. Because I want to have the same attitude that Jesus Christ has. Is that your attitude? So we see where Jesus is the example, and we make this decision. What he had, that's what I want. And then the second thing you do is you acknowledge your need for grace. And this is brand new. I could never have taught this even a year ago, what I'm about to say. You have to acknowledge your need for grace. I've taught many, many times on humility and pride, and I've always taught it from our effort. Always. Here's 4 things you need to go do. 4 things you need to go. Here's 5 things you need to go do. But it was a year ago that I really became aware of how much we can't do without him. And how much we need grace. And it shouldn't be that hard for me to understand. My life has been damaged by pride so many times. When I was in high school, my junior year, I was a wrestler all through high school. Loved wrestling. It was the sport that I just loved. And my junior year, I was 26 and something going into the tournament season. I won conference champion. Then we went to regionals, and in regionals, I finished second. Top two go on to the next round. So it was me and this kid named Steve. And Steve and I had wrestled one other time that year. I'd beaten him. And now for the regional championship, he beat me, and it ticked me off. So we both go on to sectionals. And Steve is the number 1 rated wrestler, and I'm number 2. So we're in different brackets. We're only meeting at the championship. It's the only time we're meeting. And so we both take out our first opponent. We come to our second opponent. And remember, the top 2 in those days, the top 2 went on to state. Now it's the top 3. Great. It helped me a lot. So top 2, and all I have to do is beat this kid, and I'm going to be a state wrestler. And the kid I had to wrestle didn't even have a winning record. And I remember feeling offended that all I have to do is beat a kid that doesn't even have a winning record to get to state. Are you kidding me? That's how I felt. Step on the mat with this kid, wrestling. All I can think about, I kid you not, on the mat, wrestling this kid, is saving energy for the championship match against Steve. With about 20 seconds left, the score is tied, I think it was 2-2. And literally, the thought popped in my mind, I've got to conserve energy for my match with Steve. Because all I literally have to do is hold him for 10 seconds, and we go to overtime, and we just wrestle in overtime. It never dawns on me that I could ever lose to the kid. So with 10 seconds left, thinking, I've got to save some energy for my next match, I try this high-risk roll to try and get back points real quick, and I miss it. And he reverses me as the time expires, and I lose. And I finish third. And I miss state because of my giant pride. It never dawned on me that he could ever beat me. I wish I could tell you that was the biggest price I've paid in my life because of pride, but the truth is, it's not. Pride is poison. And everywhere it comes, it poisons you. And it has been very costly in all of our lives. So I'm not saying, hey, see how humble Jesus was. You're a disciple. Try and become like him and go do that on your own. No. Here's what I absolutely know is true. I can never do this without him. So I'm not even telling you to do it without him. I'm telling you to do it with him. Because part of what he's offering is he will be your teacher and you will be the student. This is a new relationship with God that he's offering, where it's interactive. That's what he's offering. That's what is meant by this. Peter writing to the church saying, grace and peace be yours in abundance. That word grace is God doing in your life what you could never do for yourself. God is willing to do more in this area if you'll ask for it. So here's how to do it, okay? In humility, I say to God, God, I need your help with this area of my life. And 2 things you can pray, and they're on your notes. First, this is a prayer. Father, reveal any place where pride is present in my life. Any area. Let him teach you. Let him teach you. Reveal any place where pride is present in my life. And if you're wondering, if some of you are like, I'm so good at this, I wish so-and-so was here because they really need this. So flip your notes over in the back, and there are 22 simple questions you can think about that can help you decide if maybe there's a little more pride inside than you're aware of. Okay? Just things to think about. Multiple of these really ding me. But the second thing to pray is this, back on the front. So you pray, Father, give me strength to turn from this. Strength is his activity in your life. So don't try and do this without him. That's what I'm saying. He's inviting you to be his disciple. He will teach you if you ask him. And then he'll help you with it. But then here's the big one, and I want to ask you to think about this one. And this is the only other thing we're going to talk about today. We got more to talk about next week. But here's the third thing, is we have to learn how to eliminate the pecking order. You have to learn how to eliminate the pecking order, because when humility comes in, there is no pecking order anymore. We're getting into real big applications about humility now with these next three things, the one we're covering today. So we have a pecking order in Wisconsin sports, right? All of you have been in Wisconsin for a long time. We have a pecking order. We have Packer fans at the top of the pecking order, right? Detroit Lion fans go below because they're just happy to be alive. Then you got Viking fans who just constantly wish they could win a Super Bowl. And then you have Bear fans who just wish they were Packer fans. So, and the Indiana Bears, they're going to be real average next year. So anyway, there's a pecking spoken for the Bear fans in the room. All right. But in their society, when Jesus stepped into the world he was in 2,000 years ago, there was actual pecking order. There was a real pecking order. At the top of their society were these people, the religious leaders of the day, the Sanhedrin, the Pharisees, the Sadducees, the high priest. They were invited to the most important events. They sat at the head table. Everybody revered them and was in awe of them. They made way for them. They had the special privileges that came in that society. They were at the top of that society. And then came, the rest of the people. So there'd be people that were wealthy, business owners, people that had political influence. Then you had middle class. And then you had at the bottom rung of their society's ladder slaves, people who were foreigners, people who'd been captured in war and brought in as slaves. You had people who were working for the Romans who'd conquered Israel, the tax collectors. They couldn't stand them. They were at the bottom of that ladder. You had people who were living lifestyle outside of traditional norms like prostitutes. They were at the bottom rung of society's ladder in Jesus' day. Now, if you know anything about Jesus, who did he spend the majority of time with on the ladder? The top? No. He spent so much time with this group here. As a matter of fact, this group, the top group, when the teachers of religious law who were Pharisees saw him eating with tax collectors and other sinners, they asked his disciples, why does he eat with such scum? Talking about this group. Because they would never do it. They would never do it, and they couldn't believe Jesus would. And here's the point, okay? To Jesus, there was one category of human being, valuable. That's it. There weren't tiers of value in Jesus' life. Everybody fell into this one category, valuable. And somebody pointed out that humility is really social. When you look at Jesus, it really comes out in how you treat others. How do you, and I really want you to think about these in the back of your mind as you process this, how do you treat others who have less than you do? How do you treat others who sin different than you do? Because we have to get this really clear. Ready? There is no such thing except there's one category of humanity, and that is sinners. That's it. Jesus revealed that. He said it. That offends people. Until you understand what sin means. Sin literally is an archery term. It means to miss the mark, and the mark is God's perfect law. And if you resist this idea that you are a sinner, well, look at the 10 Commandments. Jesus said, never take God's name in vain, ever. You ever done that? Ever broken that law? Missed the mark? It says in the 10 Commandments, never to bear false witness, never, ever lie. You ever told a lie? It says never commit adultery. Somebody like, I never did that. Well, then Jesus comes along and says, if you look with lust upon another human being, you've committed adultery. So how many adulterers? And then Jesus comes along and says, listen, do no harm to anybody. Are you seriously going to sit here and say that you've never harmed another human being in your life? There's one category of people. Sinners. That's it. That's all there is. Those Pharisees, those religious people at the top thought that they were better because they didn't sin like the people below them. How do you treat people who sin differently than you sin? Is there humility? Who live different lives than you do? Who vote different than you do? Humility is social, and it comes out in how you treat others. A disciple of Jesus would bring the humility of Jesus into their attitude toward every human being. Now, I'm going to really try and make you think about this in some pretty challenging things for the world of Christianity, okay? First one, Democrat and Republican. If Jesus were here, one night he'd be having dinner with MAGA and the next night with liberals. And how would the other group respond to Jesus? How could you eat with those people, right? But what category did Jesus have for every human being? Valuable. That's it. Gay and straight, rich and poor, male, female, or other. But these are huge world national issues, aren't they? And many of these people, which depending on what your views are, the opposite would be in the bottom rung of our societal ladder. And guess where Jesus would be? He'd be with them. Humility brings, a disciple of Jesus would bring the humility of Jesus into their attitude toward everyone. So here's what this means. This is all from John Dixon's book, Humilitas. It would mean treating those who hold contrary beliefs with respect and friendship. Respect and friendship. Is that what you bring to every human being? Every human you ever interact with, respect and friendship. Learning to respect and care for those with whom you profoundly disagree. Is that what you bring? It's not that you can't disagree with people. We all do. But I don't even always agree with myself, so we profoundly disagree. But is there always this respect and this care for those with whom you profoundly disagree? Maintaining our convictions, but choosing to never allow them to become justification for thinking ourselves better than those with contrary convictions. And it's primarily going to come out in how you interact with them and how you treat them, because humility is social. It's how you treat the people that you don't agree with. Think about Jesus. He's our model. Do you honestly think that he was thrilled with the lifestyle of the prostitutes he ate with? Knowing what they had done the night before? Marriages torn apart? Do you think he profoundly agreed with the choices they were making? But did he respect and care and love them? And did they feel loved by him? Does this make sense? We have to be like him. He's the master, we're the student. Paul put it this way, don't be proud, but be willing to associate with people of low position. Do not be conceited, no matter what. So to me, this plays out in two ways. First, are there people in your life you tolerate rather than love? In case you aren't clear about the marching orders from Jesus, they are one order. Love everyone. Love them. That's it. Was Jesus loving towards criminals? Absolutely. Love. That's it. That's all we have. My wife has this place where she goes to get these shirts with Christian sayings that I just love. Like one of them says, God loves the people you hate. You know that, right? He loves the people you hate. Everybody you got on your hate list, he loves. You know why? Because God is not a loving God. God is love. He loves them. If you hate anyone because of your faith, you're doing it wrong. Couldn't agree more. Could not agree more. Or, one of my favorites she got recently, love thy neighbor, thy immigrant neighbor, black neighbor, atheist neighbor, Muslim neighbor, depressed neighbor, Asian neighbor, all those letters, neighbor, disabled, indigenous, Jewish, political, it doesn't matter what you put in there. they're all your neighbor. It's the point of Jesus' story about the Good Samaritan, because they said, well, who's my neighbor? And he says, everyone. Everyone's your neighbor. Love your neighbor. Love them. So are there people in your life that you tolerate rather than love? And okay, so in full disclosure, again, this last couple of weeks ago, I was in a store. I don't remember where I was. And this guy walked by, and he's a big guy, very fuzzy beard, and he was wearing a long dress and big ponytail sticking out the side of his head. Love thy neighbor. Now, we say all the time, you can't control your first thought, right? But you are completely in control of your second thought. And my second thought was, Jesus looks at this person as incredibly valuable. Jesus Christ died on the cross for this person. He loves them just as they are. And if Jesus were here present in this world today, he'd be way more likely to be with them than me. So be like Jesus. And then here's the really tough one. Okay, this is like super hard for me. Who do you have labeled? Anyone you create a label over allows you to justify treating them less than you. It actually automatically puts them as less than you once you start labeling people. And I have a real problem with this. I have a real problem with this. There are people in my life I have labeled, and I use very, very harsh labels. Stupid, rude, idiot, loser, failure. I mean, all these things. Now, thankfully, I don't say it to the person. Typically, the only person who hears it is my wife. So when I get super mad and all of a sudden, ugh, what a moron, what an idiot, again, I know this is hard to believe that I would say these things. No, it's not hard at all. And I want none of this list anymore. I want none of this list. I want only one list. I want one thing, created in the image of God, incredibly valuable just as they are. And so God has given me this wonderful opportunity. Not that long ago, someone that I really care about was treated by someone who had some authority over them in a terrible way. And they were so hurt, they just sat there and cried. Now, that triggers all of my sense of injustice. And I got mad. And old Brian wanted so badly to unleash a torrent of words about how much of an idiot that person is for treating this person this way and how stupid they are. And yet, I'm a disciple of Jesus. Which means, can you ever picture Jesus saying that about him? No. He wouldn't let their true dignity and worth get lost, even in bad behavior and bad decisions. And so I literally had to write this out. It's like, here's what I want to say, Jesus. Here's what I'm going to say and what I'm going to choose. It was amazing, the difference in my attitude, the compassion I felt towards the person who was acting wrong. And by the way, when you keep that open, then you gain the right to influence. It's interesting how much more peace you have when you choose the Jesus way. Now, that's one victory in a whole life of failure. So please hear me saying this clearly. I'm not saying, got this one. I'm saying I got it once. This is a big growth area for me, because a humble person would never respond with this list. Someone living with the humility of Jesus would respond this way. I don't let people's behavior cause me to think of them other than the way Jesus always thinks of them. Okay, so finishing up today, are you a disciple of Jesus or a fan? Remember what we said. A fan admires him, they agree with parts of what he says, they follow when it's convenient, but they miss the life and adventure that Jesus has for them. The goal is a disciple. Someone who reorders their life around Jesus, they obey him and follow him even when it costs something. So, a couple of questions. Do you want to model the humility of Jesus? Do you want this? It's incredibly powerful. The church is super weak in America today because we don't know much about this. Most Christian churches are very, very, they look the same and they sound the same and they have the same kind of people attending, and certain people aren't even welcome there. It's just my observation. But to be like Jesus, we got to model the humility of Jesus. Everybody's valuable. Are you willing to ask Jesus to teach you? Are you willing to say, Jesus, teach me? And is there someone you need to start treating differently? Let me have you bow your heads as we finish up today. Jesus, we want you to be our example in life. And we want to follow you. And many of us in this room today have made that decision. That where you go, that's where we want to go. Teach us. Are there areas where our pride is damaging people around us? Would you show that to us today? Now, with your head bowed, some of you, you're just exploring your faith here, and I want you to hear me say you are always welcome. And we hope that you take your time and get your questions answered. But some of you are ready for more with Jesus than you've had in the past. And the good news is, oh my goodness, he loves you. There's never been a moment he hasn't loved you. And he has been pursuing you all the days of your life. Because his every desire toward you is good. And he wants to involve you with him in a whole new way. He bled and died on the cross to take into his body all that we've done that's wrong, and then he rose again so that he could offer this gift to every human being, forgiveness and life. And if you want Jesus and you want his life, then with your head bowed, you can take a step toward him and say something like this in your heart. Say, Jesus, I'm turning to you today. I know that I've not lived a perfect life, but I've heard that you died on the cross for me. I'm asking for your gift of forgiveness. And I want to receive your love today. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this service today. We hope as a church and pray that this was something that really helps connect you deeper to Jesus. That's what we're all about as a church. If you need to communicate with us, if you go online to penuelchurchlife.com, in the upper right-hand corner is a box that says, I said yes to Jesus. It also says, please pray for me. Just click on that, and it'll take you to a place where you can communicate with us as a church. So if you ever want any of the resources we mentioned in a service, go there and let us know. We'll gladly send them to you. Or if you made a decision to say yes to Jesus, or you have a prayer request, just let us know. And we're always glad to hear from the people who are watching online. And if we can continue to help you grow in your faith in any way, then we want to do that. So again, thank you. And our prayer is that you continue to grow and connect and find the true life that Jesus Christ is offering.